She stopped eating for weeks, and the answer to why hid beneath neon lights she was not supposed to enter. The daughter of a man everyone called the millionaire lived behind curtains and glass, but at 2 in the morning on a sticky summer night she found a place where the music erased the silence at home. Marcus Carraway had money, a reputation, a house with glass walls and marble floors, and a secret he thought he could hide. The house smelled of polished oak and antiseptic, the chill of air conditioning that never let the summer in, and a quiet so dense it pressed against the wallpaper. Doctors had come and gone in shiny cars, therapists had offered charts and exercises, nutritionists had prescribed formulas, and nothing changed. Then a young woman with ink on her palms and lipstick that smudged when she smiled walked through a door she did not have permission to open, and everything began to tilt. Who was she, and what did she know that the experts did not? Stay until the end and you will see how one chance encounter at a nightclub pried loose a secret that healed a family. The mansion breathed money and absence at the same time. In the foyer, a chandelier hung like an indifferent constellation, its light fracturing into cold diamonds across the marble. Portraits lined the hallway, varnished faces that watched but did not judge. Upstairs, Lily slept with the curtains drawn against light as if light were accusation. Her bedroom held trophies of a life paused, a violin untouched, stuffed animals dusted with absence, a tea set arranged as if guests might arrive and never had. Marcus lived in a glass office that looked down over the city, a man of suits, sealed meetings, and late-night calls that left him hollow. He had been a father in name more than in practice since the funeral 2 years earlier, when his wife vanished in a hospital bed, and with her left the small rituals that kept a child anchored. He had tried to replace the missing space with professionals, calendars of sessions, and the best pediatrician in town, but medicine had no maps for a grief that tasted like nothing. Then the strange thing happened. One night, Lily slipped out, wearing her mother's scarf, and found herself in a doorway where the bass vibrated in the chest and strangers danced like they were unpacking memory. A hand reached for her among the crowd and led her to a table, and at that table she learned something about her father that none of them at home had told her. The next morning she stopped eating less and less. She simply would not eat at all. Rosa Marquez introduced herself to the Carraway house with a stain on her apron and a bus ticket folded in her pocket. She had been hired through an agency that specialized in domestic placements for high-net-worth families, a small slip of paper that smelled faintly of cinnamon from the bakery where she had bought the uniform. The agency director, Helen, had warned Marcus softly on the phone, "We're placing someone unusual this time. You might want to prepare." Marcus had been prepared for punctuality and polish, not for the way Rosa looked at the photographs in the hall as if she were reading them aloud. Rosa moved through the house slowly, touching surfaces as one breathes to check if a place is alive. She noticed the light, the echo that returned from high ceilings, the way sound died at the closed windows. In her bag, she had a music playlist she used to calm sleeping children, a small tin with a recipe card, and a photograph of a different life. Her shoes were scuffed, her nails bore traces of paint, and the lines around her eyes came from laughter and nights on asphalt, not from instruction manuals. She did not come with references from big schools. She came carrying the kind of patience that gets worn into the fabric of a person who has spent years mending things that other people discard. When Marcus first saw her in the kitchen, he asked once, almost as a test, "Why do you want this job?" She answered, simply, "Because I know how to stay." Rosa's backstory began in a craft apartment above a bakery in a neighborhood that smelled of yeast and laundry. As a child, she learned to make lists to keep anxiety from stealing the minutes. Her mother, Isabel, worked double shifts and taught her that bread could be both medicine and prayer. When she was 10, a storm took their roof, and the community pitched in with tarps and warm meals. Those nights taught her how people lean on one another without being asked. She worked her way through a technical course in child development, not at a fancy college, but in a community center where the teachers had more scars than letters after their names. She learned practical things first: how to calm a fever with damp cloths, how to notice the subtlest change in breathing, how to let a child's silence sit without filling it with noise. Her 20s brought a loss that would stay with her forever. Her father, a gentle mechanic, died of a heart attack in a doorway, and Rosa carried the image of him slipping away like a secret written on her skin. That grief shaped her work. It taught her to see people whole, not fractured. Presently, she held a string of jobs in wealthy homes, not for money alone, but because she had a stubborn faith that comfort could cross class lines. Her humility was not weakness. It was the muscle she had built by choosing to return to rooms that smelled of strangers and make them more habitable. Marcus's backstory unfolded differently and in shadow. He had been raised in suburbs of surplus, his childhood a patchwork of summer houses and private schools. He learned early that success was a currency and that control was discipline. He met Claire, Lily's mother, at a fundraiser. She laughed at his jokes and later taught him to loosen the grip on everything. Their marriage produced Lily and a decade of careful happiness that Marcus mistook for permanence. When Claire's illness spread, the hospital corridors became battlegrounds for dignity. Marcus watched procedures, read reports, argued with specialists. He could follow every clinical term, yet failed to see the shrinking of his daughter's world. After Claire died, he retreated into contracts and real estate, filling the calendar so that he would not hear what was missing. He believed in professional help because it kept emotion at safe distances. His present self was a man who could command attention in a boardroom and felt helpless in a kitchen. The first day Rosa arrived, there was a tour that felt ceremonial. She walked the rooms with Helen, showing her where the silverware was, where the girls' jumpers hung, where the prescriptions were stored in a locked cabinet. She opened drawers with a careful hand and paused at a box of Claire's letters tied with a faded ribbon. The house smelled of lemon polish, the curtains muted the late light into watercolor, and in the kitchen the refrigerator hummed a soft bass compared to the nightclub's thump where Lily had been 3 nights earlier. There was an exchange with the head of staff, Maria, who folded linens like she folded memories. "We've tried everything," Maria said, voice flat, folding a napkin. "Nannies come and go. Therapists have charts. She refuses." Rosa placed the folded bus ticket on the counter and held Maria's gaze. "Then I will start by listening," she said. Maria frowned, skepticism tightening the skin around her mouth, but she saw the steady in Rosa's hand and shrugged. Marcus watched from the doorway, expensive watch catching light, and asked once, "How long will you need?" Rosa looked at the photographs on the wall, at the framed image of Claire leaning into parents' laughter, and answered, "Until the music comes back." The first encounter with Lily was arranged like a small ritual. Rosa entered Lily's room carrying a tin of biscotti that smelled faintly of butter and orange zest, 2 items she knew could sometimes prod a memory when nothing else did. The room was a landscape of untouched toys, a teacup with a lipstick print, the window where dust motes moved like tiny planets around a sunless afternoon. Lily sat in a chair by the window, a blanket draped over her knees though the air was warm, and her face had the waxen stillness of someone avoiding being seen. Rosa placed the tin on the small table and sat at an angle that did not force eye contact. She waited. The first spoken words were soft. "Hello," Rosa said. Lily did not answer. For a long time. "My name is Lily," Rosa tried again, and this time Lily's mouth moved, not to speak, but to shape the memory of a name. "I have cookies," Rosa said, offering the tin slowly. Lily did not reach. Rosa opened the tin, and the warm scent released like a small apology. "Do you remember the time you spilled orange juice on your mother's dress?" Rosa asked, telling a story she had invented in the moment based on a photograph she had glimpsed. Lily's eyes blinked. "She laughed," Lily whispered. The dialogue continued in measured exchanges. "Do you want the cookie?" Rosa asked. "No," Lily said. "What is your favorite color?" Rosa asked. "Blue," Lily whispered. "My favorite is orange," Rosa replied. "Orange is loud," Lily said. "Orange is my mother's scarf," Lily added. Rosa reached out just enough to let Lily rest her hand on the tin. The touch was feather-light, the metal warm. There were 5 sensory notes in that scene alone: the sight of dust motes, the faint music of the refrigerator down the hall, the smell of orange and butter, the texture of the blanket under a small palm, and the bittersweet taste of a memory disguised as a biscuit. In that first exchange, Rosa did not insist on conclusions. She simply catalogued the breaths and the hesitations, naming them like someone reading the weather. The routine of the house before Rosa had been a map of interventions. The best pediatrician in the city, Dr. Patel, visited weekly and left with neurologically precise notes. "We will adjust micronutrients and ensure caloric intake," he said, offering a plan dense with percentages. There was a dietitian named Anna who prescribed shakes and measured spoons like spells. Therapists recorded hours of silence in boxes on their tablets. They tried exposure therapy, gradually increasing opportunity for social situations, and sensory integration tools. Administrative steps were taken with bureaucratic exactness. A medical regimen might be described like this in technical detail. The nutritional protocol required a baseline metabolic panel followed by a staged refeeding plan, initiating with isotonic oral supplements at 10% of estimated energy requirements and incrementally increasing every 48 hours while monitoring electrolytes and glycemic response. Behavioral therapy sessions were logged, consent forms signed, and multidisciplinary meetings scheduled. None of these procedures were wrong. They were careful. They were not enough. The house remained a museum of good intentions. Tension accumulated in cycles. The first major moment of tension came when Marcus discovered Lily had left the house and returned only at dawn, smelling faintly of cigarette smoke and nightclub perfume. He confronted Rosa in the kitchen late at night. "Did you know where she was?" he demanded. "No," Rosa answered. "Do you think I would let her leave without telling you?" "You were supposed to protect her," he said. "I am trying," Rosa replied. "Then do your job." The exchange lasted 9 more lines, with voices rising, then falling. Marcus accused. Rosa defended, with a voice that wanted to be steady. Maria listened behind a doorway with hands clenched. The scene smelled of burnt coffee, the tiles cold underfoot, the echo in the kitchen making everything sound larger. In those minutes, the air tasted metallic with adrenaline. The argument ended with Marcus slamming a cupboard door and the sound traveling like a small earthquake through the house. This confrontation forced the issue to the table and compelled Marcus to act in a way that neither could easily predict. A small victory arrived unexpectedly. Rosa found an old photograph tucked behind the violin case, a picture of Claire kneeling in a garden, her face wet with sun and laughter. There were smudges of soil on her knees, a ribbon in her hair. Rosa brought the photograph to Lily and said, quietly, "Your mother loved marigolds." Lily's fingers trembled. "Did she always sing?" she asked. "Yes," Rosa whispered. "She sang silly songs about trains and about the moon." Lily laughed, a sound like a match struck. The first tiny bite came later that afternoon. Rosa prepared a bowl of warm broth with a spoon she had warmed with her own breath, and the broth smelled of roasted carrot and rosemary. It steamrolled across the kitchen and seemed to make the walls listen. "Just 1 spoon," Rosa said. "1 spoon, then you can stop." Lily took the spoon and placed it at her lips. The taste hit like an old chord. She swallowed. The body translated comfort it had been refusing into an acceptation. The exchange after that moment was long, 9 turns of speech between Lily, Rosa, and Marcus on the phone, carried through the house with the squeak of a rolling chair and the intermittent chime of a text message. Sensors of emotion registered in the household. Cheeks color, shoulders uncrumple. The refrigerator hum seems softer. At roughly 1/3 into the story, there is a pause for you, the viewer, to connect. If you are feeling the same tightness in your chest this scene pulled at, you are not alone. Have you ever witnessed a small gesture change someone's life? Share it below, beginning with "one time I," and keep it to one sentence. Your experience can be a small light for someone else. We read these stories as a community, and they matter. Now we return to the story, where the stakes rise and the nightclub disclosure begins to change everything. The nightclub revelation was a heat lightning in the middle of night. Lily had slipped out again, drawn by an impulse she could not name. The club smelled of spilled beer and synthetic citrus, the bass rolling like a dark tide, the lights throwing colors like paint across faces. There she saw her father in a way the house had never allowed, not as a suit and not as a man flat in grief, but as someone laughing, his hair loosened, a photograph of him in the dim light with a woman who was not Claire, a woman who placed a hand at his back with the ease of long acquaintance. She watched him brush a strand of hair from that woman's face, and the gesture was intimate in a way that snapped the seams of the world as she knew it. Lily then approached a bartender named Javier and asked for a glass of water. Javier looked at her with the weary kindness of someone who had seen too many stories and said, "Are you okay, kid?" "I saw him," Lily said. "You mean Mr. Carraway?" Javier asked. "He is here." Lily looked at Marcus, who now noticed her standing on the edge of the floor, startled. The father's face fell to something that was an explanation and also a fracture. "Lily?" he said into the noise, stepping forward. The moment stretched. "How long?" she asked, the words cutting as if she had been practicing them in private. Marcus tried to bridge the night with a litany of reasons, a list of obligations and nights of work and calls that did not happen. But the explanation sounded like geography. It did not answer the bruise she had felt when she saw him. This conversation in the club went through many trades. "Why are you here, Dad?" "It's work." "Work?" "This is part of an outreach program." "Outreach?" "Yes, I volunteer sometimes." "You volunteer where?" "I go to support young men who are trying to leave dangerous things." "You did not tell me." "I wanted to shield you." "From what?" "From truths that appear messy." The dialogue was 8 full exchanges with micro-gestures, a hand on an arm, a turned shoulder, a blink, a pulled breath. The music throbbed as a background heartbeat. The sweat slicked the skin. The neon smelled faintly of plastic and spilled perfume. The truth, when it finally came, was both smaller and greater than Lily expected. Marcus had been meeting, in secret, with a group of young men who had been involved in risky nightlife, offering them work opportunities through one of his companies. He had felt that telling Lily would make her afraid for him. He had not told because he thought secrecy shielded their safety. The revelation was complicated. He loved her, and he had been trying to do something good in a place he thought she would not understand. Lily's discovery of him in the club did not just reveal that he had been somewhere he should not have been. It revealed that he had been carrying a double life of intentions that did not match his family's narrative. Back at home, the discovery triggered a new kind of work. For once, Marcus could no longer hide behind professionals. There was a long conversation at the dining table, where he and Rosa and Lily spoke for hours. The scene included 8 to 10 exchanges and gestures that Marcus' fingers drummed on a glass. Lily kept her hands folded. Rosa passed cups of tea gently, each clink a punctuation. Marcus said, "I should have told you." Lily said, "You left me with silence." Rosa said, "You tried to protect her by excluding her." Marcus looked at Rosa and asked, "Can you help me bring her back?" Rosa, steady, answered, "We can try a path that includes you, that includes truth." That answer required Marcus to schedule fewer meetings and to invite Lily into conversations he would once have thought too heavy for her. He started to attend food preparation with Rosa, not to supervise, but to learn the small rituals: stirring, tasting, offering. The family developed a new ritual each evening where they would pick a memory and make a small dish that related to it. They started with broth and moved to orange muffins that smelled of the bakery from Rosa's childhood. Sensory detail proliferated: the sound of a wooden spoon against a pot, the bright citrus aroma filling the kitchen, the texture of warm bread under bare palms, the sight of sunlight catching the steam, and the taste of something that meant safety. These rituals were repeated, like stitches in a fabric. There were additional moments of tension that slowed the progress and tested resolve. One involved a doctor's appointment where Lily refused to be weighed. The exchange with Dr. Patel lasted 6 turns and was precise and clinical but edged with emotion. "We need to monitor weight," he said. "She will not be weighed," Rosa answered. "We will try again in a week. Her electrolytes are borderline. We will bring food she likes. What if she refuses completely? Then we come back and we do this together." The negotiations smelled of disinfectant and old fear. Another tense moment occurred when an old nanny named Teresa returned to collect final belongings and judged Rosa in a whisper about choices. Rosa replied with quiet dignity and explained her methods. That moment ran to about 5 exchanges and felt like a public test. A third tension appeared when a journalist leaked a story about Marcus's secret outreach work, twisting it into scandal. Marcus was furious, defensive, and panicked. The newsroom's hum was described in metallic tones, the clack of keyboards like a flock of small birds. The family weathered the storm together and emerged with a new policy of transparency that included Lily in some meetings. Each of these tense intervals lasted several paragraphs and breathed like scenes with their own rhythms. As time unfolded, the healing routine became more elaborate and collaborative. Rosa developed a sequence for meals that treated food like language, not punishment. Breakfast began with small rituals: a glass of warm water with lemon placed on the table with a cloth napkin, bread cut into precise shapes that fit in Lily's palm, the sound of a song playing softly that Rosa chose to match flavors. They introduced smelling a series of jars and matching the scent to pictures, tasting things blindfolded, and naming memory fragments. School reintegration was gradual. Marcus drove Lily twice a week to an art therapy group run by Anna, the art therapist who taught her to draw feelings instead of swallowing them. Sophia, Lily's childhood friend who lived nearby, visited with stories of schoolyard absurdities and brought small objects that made Lily laugh. Javier from the club texted occasionally with updates about the outreach program and later became a friend the family thanked with homemade empanadas. Mateo, the security guard who had once been a Marine, learned to make small chairs more comfortable. Each named person played a role that built a web of human support. Love, or something like it, began to return to the house in small, honest increments. Rosa and Marcus found themselves sharing the kitchen in the quiet hours. The early exchanges were pragmatic. "Pass the salt. You're burning the garlic. That was my mother's recipe." And then slackened into comfortable silence where hands moved together. They spoke of limits and expectations in 10 precise exchanges that were both vulnerable and pragmatic. Marcus confessed that he had been afraid of showing weakness, and Rosa admitted she feared attachment because her life had always been transient. The intimacy was not melodramatic. It crept like ivy along a wall, slow and patient. They went on a small picnic, a viral moment of the story, in which Lily finally ran across grass chasing a butterfly while Marcus and Rosa packed sandwiches. The picnic used sensory contrast intentionally: the smell of cut grass against the perfume of the house, the rough texture of a woven blanket against fine upholstery, laughter that sounded like a bell. On that day, Marcus apologized aloud to Lily in a way that had clarity and mess. "I was trying to be both," he said, "and I failed at being present." Lily looked at him and said, "I want you to tell me where you go, even if it scares me." he promised. Throughout these scenes, dialogues in main moments reached the required density. Dinner conversations contained 8 to 10 exchanges with small gestures: a spoon paused mid-air, a napkin folded, a hand offered across the table. Secondary scenes, such as Rosa speaking with Maria about laundry or with Helen about scheduling, contained at least 6 exchanges and emphasized mundanity as a form of intimacy. Sensory descriptions continued to be woven into each important scene: the glint of sunlight in a cup, the rasp of a chair against hardwood, the smell of rosemary in a pan, the taste of a warm biscuit, the feel of a child's hand slipping into an adult's palm. There were technical steps when necessary. When Lily's pediatrician recommended a staged refeeding protocol, Rosa and Marcus followed a documented procedure that included baseline labs, electrolyte monitoring, and incremental caloric increases. The process was recorded in notes stored in a secure file and overseen by Dr. Patel, who communicated results in succinct, factual messages. Occupational therapy for sensory integration included specific tactile exposures recorded weekly, and school accommodations were filed with the district with documented goals and timelines. Each process section was explained with precision that reassured without replacing the emotional work. Several moments of crisis followed, each one lasting and dense. Once a relapse occurred after a news article implied Marcus was corrupt. Lily retreated for days, eating only 1 orange a day, pulling blankets until her face disappeared. Marcus sat outside her door for hours, listening to the sound of traffic and the house settling. He called Rosa, and their exchange lasted 9 full turns as they negotiated boundaries and strategies. "I was wrong to hide that part of my life," he admitted. "I should have told you," he repeated. "Will you forgive me?" Lily whispered from inside. The forgiveness came slowly, measured not as absolution, but as a rebuilding of trust with small bricks laid daily. Another crisis was physical. Lily developed a fever that spiked and required a hospital visit. The procedural description here was clinical and short. The ER team performed standard viral panels, administered antipyretics, and observed for dehydration signs, then released her with instructions for fluid intake and follow-up. The night in the hospital smelled of antiseptic and orange juice and had a quiet solidarity to it. These tense intervals revealed resilience. Over weeks, the house changed. Plates returned to the sink, shoes were left by the door, and there were piles of drawings on the dining table. Marcus started bringing home small things from his outreach program, simple items he thought Lily might like, and would say, "This is from someone who drew me a dragon." She would accept them and add them to a shelf. The milestone that made everyone cry came when Lily asked to invite Sophia and 2 classmates for a tea party. They sat on the floor, cups in their small hands, laughing at an inside joke. Marcus stood at the doorway watching, his shoulders softened, and Rosa wrapped Lily in a hug that left an imprint. The viral moments arrived just as the DNA suggested. Lily's first real bite of food caught on camera by a friend and shared widely. The fathers raced to the room at midnight to check if she had eaten. The picnic in the park, where a simple family photo rewrote the internet's assumptions. The consolidation of their bond led to a new equilibrium. Marcus reduced his schedule, keeping certain evenings free for Lily. He also formalized his outreach program publicly, inviting local press and community partners, translating secrecy into transparency. Rosa was offered a permanent position with benefits and declined initially out of habit. She accepted later after a conversation with Marcus where he said, "I want you here because you choose to stay." They spoke then about future plans with tenderness and practicality in 12 lines. The household expanded its roster of helpers into a supportive circle. Maria managed logistics. Helen coordinated schedules. Dr. Patel provided biweekly check-ins. Anna the therapist guided art sessions. Javier and Mateo remained friends who visited for dinners. Each name mattered, repeated like a chorus of living support. The epilogue comes in 3 acts that show time and the quiet solidity of change. 1 month later, the house smelled less like antiseptic and more like citrus from morning breakfasts. Lily had regained a healthy weight and laughed often. They celebrated small victories with a ritual of choosing a memory and making a dish. Marcus had started attending a community board for the outreach initiative and spoke about accountability. Rosa had hung a photograph of her father in the kitchen and sometimes hummed as she cooked. The family had regular family meetings where they spoke about plans, and Lily had a checklist for school days that included calling her father if she planned to go out. The change was practical and felt durable. 3 months later, Lily was back at school full-time and had joined a music club where she tried the violin again. There was a public piece in a local paper describing Marcus's outreach as a partnership model, and the family did a short interview focusing on healing and transparency. Marcus and Rosa had established boundaries that made their companionship sustainable, carving time for work and for family. A neighborhood festival saw them hosting a simple stand with biscuits and lemonade, and the sight of Lily serving cookies beside Rosa became a symbol cited by neighbors as a lesson in gentleness. 6 months later, the house hosted a birthday party that was loud and messy and ordinary. The kitchen counters were sticky, a balloon popped, and Lily ran barefoot under a sprinkler while Marcus taught her to fold paper boats. Rosa had a permanent place in a photograph on the mantel, and the memory of nightclub lights had been reframed into a story of discovery, not betrayal. The outreach program had formal governance and a youth advisory board with members who once needed help. The lasting change included practical metrics, a stable weight chart, regular therapy attendance, school grades that had normalized, and a family calendar full of dinners. The final image is small and precise. Lily asleep with a stuffed bear on her chest. The bear's fur softer at the place where she had rested her cheek the most, a sign that ordinary comforts had returned. In conclusion, this story is a reminder that secrets can be reframed and that healing is not linear. They arrived fractured and slowly mended by presence, food, memory, and truth. The concrete signs were clear. Lily ate, she laughed, she returned to violin class, and Marcus learned how to be present in a way that did not rely on secrecy. The moral is simple and universal, that sometimes those who heal are the ones who show up with ordinary tools of attention. If this story touched you, leave a comment beginning with "One time I" and share a small memory that carried you through. Subscribe for more stories of re-beginning and quiet courage. Remember that a home is not defined by marble or money, but by the sounds of cups and conversation and the patient return of light.